Good. All right. Good evening and welcome to the City of Davis Unified School District 2x2. It is Wednesday, March 20th. And I'll note that it is 5:06 and we'll call the meeting to order. I'll recognize that Councilmember Neville from the Davis City Council is here. Trustee Escamilla Greenwald is here from Davis Joint Unified School District, and Trustee Jackson will be here shortly, so we have a quorum. And with that, we'll call the meeting to order. I'm going to move on to agenda item number 2, which is general public comment. And we may address the 2x2 on matters that are not listed on the agenda. Do we have any general public comment? Seeing none, we will close general public comment, and we are going to move to agenda item number 3, which is approval of the January 17th, 2023 minutes. Does anybody have any edits or changes they'd like to make? And if not, we can entertain a motion to approve.
I don't have any changes, and I would move the minutes, move approval.
I second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Neville, a second by Trustee Escamilla Greenwald. Any further questions, comments, concerns? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries 3-0. Perfect. With that, we are on to item 4, city and district communication. I will turn this over to Mike and Matt.
Just one quick thing for me, and that's a big thanks to the first responders that came to Davis High School this morning. We had a teacher with a medical emergency who's in critical but stable condition, and just a big thanks to them and our staff for their quick response. You always train for these sorts of things, hoping they never happen, but really appreciative of our staff and the first responders who just did a great job. So big thanks to them.
Thank you, Matt, and appreciate the kudos to the staff and appreciation to your staff too for being so prepared and preparing for the first responders' arrival. So that can make all the difference. So a couple of brief updates. First of all, I wanted to just announce that the Hate Free Together website has now been officially launched, and of course DJOSD is a key partner with us on that, along with UC Davis and Yolo County and the Yolo County Office of Education as the founding partners. So that was announced on March 11th that the website is now live and active. It's hatefreetogether.org. Pretty simple and straightforward to get to. So that website includes information on how to report hate crimes in various jurisdictions, resources for victims, local, state, and federal statistics and information about hate crimes, and then a calendar of events of related trainings, education opportunities, and events that are coming up. And that will, of course, be more and more populated as the program progresses forward, as more programs and trainings and events get organized. So the Hate Free Together partners are going to be tabling at the Farmers Market this Saturday, the 23rd. So if you're out at the Farmers Market, keep an eye out for them. They'll be sort of helping promulgate the website launch, and not only so much the website, but as the resources in the initiative itself, of course, is the critical part. And the website is the vehicle to help transmit that partnership that's happening. So we're truly appreciative of the district's partnership on that, and it's definitely a group effort all around. So lots more to come around Hate Free Together in the coming months. The second and last announcement that I have for today is, so the last week and this week we had the sign-ups for our summer recreation, some of our key summer recreation programs, and very happy to report that in a first ever collaboration of this kind, the city and DJUSD have worked together this year to increase access to our summer recreation programs to under-resourced youth. In this particular case, the city and the district began the collaboration early this year, which involved the development of new enrollment processes and outreach methods in order to reach more families in need and maybe under-resourced and who may otherwise be challenged in paying recreation program fees for our summer programs. So we're very excited to report that that collaboration has resulted in the enrollment of 80 children, all of whom are DJUSD students, and into our City of Davis Summer Recreation Program for free. So in other words, these are students whose families qualified for income through programs like the Free Reduced Lunch Program that the district has, the Foster Homeless Program. And they opted into the city's recreation reduced fee or free rec program. So we made sure that everything was very clearly articulated about data sharing and so much and so forth. So we didn't get into any of that. So the families were provided with information from the school district staff, and then they could opt into the city's recreation program that allowed free enrollment. So happy to report that, again, 80 children, all of whom are DJUSD children, have enrolled as of today. So the city, we will be gathering additional demographic data, and we intend to report on additional details of that collaboration at the conclusion of our summer programming, and sort of see how the responses were to that program, the ease of access to it, the programming itself, and is it serving the needs of these families and children here locally. But we're, and a lot of this is made possible financially from ARP fund commitments that the city council had made to set aside funding to help offset these program fees for families in need. So very excited about that. Our Parks and Rec staff is very thrilled with that turnout. So a lot more to come though in terms of information, the collaboration, how we can continue to partner like this moving forward. So very exciting. That's all I have today.
All right, thank you, Mike. I'll turn to any of my colleagues for any questions for Mike or Matt. You good? Great. One quick question, Mike. Is the 80, is that the max, or that's the cap, or is there a cap, or is that just the number that it would roll up to?
No,
so
it's
far?
not a cap. It's just the number that's happens to be a round number that has been enrolled so far. Last week and then again this morning was the enrollment for our sort of our major programs like Horse Camp and Trekkers and things like that. And it's access to all the programs, including the high profile, very high impact, highly desired programs as well. So yeah.
Thank you. Happy to see that.
And I will say there is more capacity to do more, and we're going to be identifying, okay, what are some ways that we can help increase that capacity moving forward.
Are there ways that if there are ways that we know maybe some students, like if my kids have classmates or know students who may qualify, where do we direct people to engage with this program?
Yeah, they can get a hold of our their parents can get a hold of our rec department directly, Parks and Rec, either through our online portal or by calling the front office, and sometimes that's just a phone call is the simplest way to help them navigate to the right place and where there's availability of programming. The higher impact programs, of course, get filled immediately. So there's not necessarily room in those at this point, but that there may still be other spaces in other programs.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
And I would say if they're looking for a point of connection in particular, Tamiko Kwok or Deanne Machado are excellent resources.
That's great. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you so much. And that was a good question, and it kind of led me to think about another question. What do they do to do outreach to maybe limited English-speaking families or some that may not speak English?
Yeah, I would need to check in with our staff team. I know that there was a lot of collaboration with school districts, staff, administrative staff to help, where the school district was actually the first point of contact with the families to help create awareness about the program and the program availability and at the reduced or free rate. So I would definitely want to check in with staff and your staff as well to understand how sort of ESL was factored into that. And to see, I don't know what the standard protocols are for the school district reaching out to parents and families.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I just would, say, Matt, please pass on our well wishes to your staff who was not only had the incident today, but who were there and helped and supported when this happened. It can be a tough time to see that and go through it and then bounce back, and I imagine probably stayed at school and did their job, and that's not easy. And I talked with a couple of folks who are teachers, or dear friends of mine, who, you know, were there and working with kids, and that team seemed like engaged and kicked into focus, did the work they need to do, and we're hoping for the best. So thank you and your staff for your work on that. I'll open up public comment for city district communications. Any general public or comment on agenda item number 4? All right, seeing none, we will close agenda item number 4 and move to item number 5, discussion items. 5A is facilities and capital improvement project updates. We have the school district up first. Turn over to Superintendent Best.
Okay.
Or,
Yeah, Matt and I talked and we thought maybe, I just have a few updates, and Matt has, I think, the bulk of it today and also some slides. So, you're showing me up on the slide.
he's got a lot to be proud of, but I can see what's
Yeah,
happening
yeah,
on this
there's a lot
slide.
of
So, you know, you have the right
Got boss.
slide. Yeah.
So I'll start today. So a couple that are particularly, we have a lot more projects in this happening, but these are a few that are, I think, are of particular interest to the district. So one is 14th Street. So 14th Street, we've been working on for a few years now in various machinations, and the district has been, you know, a fundamental stakeholder in that, of course, with fronting your facilities fronting on 14th Street. So for 14th Street currently, which is a grant-funded project, our designer is working on what we call the 75% plan bid package, and our staff is working on executing a task order with Will Dan, who's our consultant, to assist with completing work that has to be done for the funding from Caltrans. So that means submitting the 75% bid package to Caltrans for their approval for release of the grant funds. So construction would happen during the summer, of course, due to proximity to the schools. We don't want to be disrupting that kind of a corridor during school times. So based on the progress to date, the project would likely begin in summer of 2025, so that we can get to the 100% plans, actually have the bid package ready, have all the grant funds already lined up and ready to issue from Caltrans, and then we put the bid package out for bidding to be ready for going as soon as school is out in the summer of 2025. So we also took that to our Bicycle Transportation Street Safety Commission just last week, and they received an update on the project proposal and provided some comments on the revised design, which keen interest of the school district, I think, includes removal of what was previously proposed to be a cycle track on 14th Street on that north edge of the street, fronting along the school district and library properties. So that part through our stakeholder discussions with various stakeholder groups, of course, the district and site reps from those various locations, there were some major concerns with including a cycle track along that frontage in light of all the pickup drop-off movements that happen with all the driveway cuts that are along that corridor, and not wanting to create a false sense of security for cyclists and creating the two-way cycle track, especially going both ways, where someone may not necessarily be looking the right direction, especially in a car and they're exiting or entering a driveway for these facilities. So, that's been the major adjustment to the scope of the work, and there's actually been quite a good support for not including that. So BTSSC included. The BTSSC also agreed with the elimination of that project component. And we've also since had some follow-up with the granting agency to make sure that removal of that component wouldn't jeopardize the grant, and they're good with it. There's plenty of other aspects to the project that are directly related to safety along that corridor that would still be part of the project scope. The other one is Anderson Road, so Anderson for Chavez Elementary. Anderson Road, again, joint partnership with the school district and the city in seeking grant funds. The designer has began survey work last week and is working on gathering the utility data and signal timing data and traffic count data for the preliminary design. And so we're looking to bring this to the we have a standing city school district staff meeting that we're going to be bringing that to shortly for internal discussion, and we're looking to go to our Bicycle Transportation Street Safety Commission in June with an update on sort of some preliminary thinking and thoughts after we've had the discussion at the staff level. So things are progressing on that. And then the last update I have is, so Hamel Lane, near Pioneer in South Davis. So I'm sure you know it well. The city, we conducted a survey of residents and property owners on Hamel about the potential of the concept of converting that to a one-way street to help facilitate safety improvements with, particularly related to pickup, drop-off, and so forth happening there. And as a way to further encourage parents to drop off students in front of the school and not across the street. So by basically eliminating their ability to drive on the other side of the street. So we sent out the surveys and we got the responses back on that. I will say that 100% of the survey respondents said a hard no to the idea of converting to one-way street. So we are working now with the district on some additional messaging opportunities, trying to influence that drop-off behaviors, and potentially looking at some other options that could help with that circumstances out there at Pioneer. So more to come on that, but I just want to report out on the street survey results that we had. So those are my updates. He's happy to answer any questions on that, and then we can go to Matt's items.
Yeah, I imagine we'll have some follow-up with Matt, so why don't we just jump into what Mike presented and we'll get Superintendent Best. Sure, Councilman Neville.
Yeah, thank you for that update. And I just wanted to add just a couple of minor comments around that 14th Street corridor and the work that's being done there, because I think there's one thing in particular that I think will be very reassuring to the school district. And that is, if you envision that corridor and you know where the intersection of 14th and F is, there are a lot of students in the morning who are heading east, either to Harper or wherever, and for a really long time, they have been making a left turn onto F from the far right lane in conflict with right turning vehicles. And so one of the things that Ryan Chapman has done, he's going to create a very distinctive pathway for those bikes so that they now do the thing that they should be doing, which is moving into the left and having a dedicated bike lane. So I think it's going to be really good. I live right there and watch that every day for 22 years, so I'm really glad for that. And the other thing that I hadn't realized till the Bike Commission talked with Ryan about it too is the backup that the Unitrans stop causes. The bus stops at right there on 14th after it turns at F, and that creates a big bottleneck. And they're looking into some possibilities around that, but I think it's pretty logistically difficult to move the Unitrans stop. But they're aware of that, and they're trying to address that problem because they're aware of the concern it creates. So it's a good project, and I'm really glad to see that the two-way track isn't going to happen with teen drivers coming in and out of the high school parking lot. So it's good. Good change.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We live near Pioneer Elementary School. So actually, I am happy that they're not going to be doing the one-way, but I was open to it. Our kids said, who thought of that? Did adults think of that? No. They said, who thought of that? Did adults think of that? That's not a good idea. They should talk to us kids. So just those two cents. I was wondering, there's that stop sign at Schmeiser and Hamel, excuse me, and it's the one going, let's see, would it be going east? I forget, but anyways, there's a stop sign there. And we always have, people helping there with crossing guards, which is good that they have them around there. Has the city ever thought of putting a stop sign there? Or would it back up traffic too much, do you know?
I would definitely want to check with Ryan Chapman, our Public Works Assistant Director and Traffic Engineer.
Okay.
If there's typically when there's an intersection where folks think, ooh, shouldn't this be a four-way stop, and it's not. Typically the reason why it's not is because of what's called traffic warrants. And it's basically the state legal standard to put in a stop sign and to have it be enforceable. So, in other words, the city council has the ability to make findings to put in a stop sign, even if those traffic warrants or traffic volumes are not met to justify one legally. But the challenge with it is if people end up running that stop sign, our police department can't issue tickets and have them stick. So that's the sort of the push and the pull to it. So yeah, but I'm happy to check in with Ryan to get some background on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, right? For me, it is at least, because I think if you look at, it's not surprising that 100% of the respondents said they didn't want a one-way street, right? If you live on Hamel, your kid's just gonna walk to school, right? And why would you say you want to back up traffic on your street if you're not really impacted by it, right? You just turn your car and you just go southbound or whatever, you know. So I think that there's, you know, I think it was great that we did it, and we need to do that to be able to really process through what some of the options are. But I do think that, you know, thinking creatively, not that we're not, but we, you know, we have crossing guards. We added a cross guard at Schmeiser and Cowell there as well, due to people being negligent and turning, running stop signs, and then they turn the corner and get to where you're talking, they're just stuck. So I don't know, I mean, just trying to find other ways, or funneling people, I don't know what that looks like for you guys, but I mean, it's one of those ones that comes up all the time. But the reality of the situation, right, we had this conversation this morning related to Mace Boulevard and a different call with the county, is that every single school has this problem, right? I mean, I live by Montgomery, you drive by there at 8:15, my kids were going down to get a Harper, right, and it's packed, right? Today I picked my son up at Harper, and there were lines of cars everywhere. So I think it's just, this one is just so impacted because it's such a small, tight area.
It wasn't designed for that volume.
No, it wasn't, yeah, and I think, and it's like, so what do you, yeah, at some point, there has to be like, it is what it is, and you just hope that people change behavior at some point, right? Because I mean, there's only so much that can happen there. And not to say that we can't do it, but it's, no matter what's gonna get backed up somewhere. I think that's changing behavior, and riding bicycles, walking is obviously a way to help with that. But anyway, all right, I'm gonna turn, we'll do public comment after Superintendent Best. So I'll turn now to discussion item 5A again with Superintendent Best.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not meaning to show my cup or anything. These are slides that have been used at many venues lately, board meetings and other public outreach. And I'll sort of start that I think there are moments in time where there's a lot of paradox. And I think this presentation sort of exemplifies some of the paradox we as a district are facing, where we've got new construction, we've got declining enrollment, we've got budget challenges, and we're opening new programming. Like all of those things, you as governing members for the city, understand those paradoxes. But I think our district is in one of those periods of paradox in many ways. So quick update, many of you have seen what's going on with our bond projects. These include projects that are actually funded by our bond and another about $75 million worth of other funds, CFD funds, state match dollars, and also state grant dollars for several projects. So just a little bit of history. The facilities master plan was created in 2018. It had been almost 20 years since we'd had a facilities master plan update. The board decided to go after a bond measure in 2018. That voters overwhelmingly approved that measure and raised a little over $150 million in bond funds. And the board since then has reprioritized and prioritized the future phases of our project, and I'll tell you a little about where we are at the moment. What we're calling our signature projects have been performing very well. Up to this point, we're real close to the $100 million mark as the STEM building is nearing completion. And all of the projects noted there are complete and have been occupied in use. And on average, they were 10% under budget and on schedule. And because we did many, specifically the MPRs did the same project at various campuses, we saved about 15% on soft costs, which is pretty significant between the two of those. Got a lot of bang for our buck on these projects. The largest project we have going, if you've been down 14th Street, is the STEM building. It's going to be beautiful. The wrapping is starting to come off, so you're getting a glimpse of what the building will look like. It includes 12 science labs and other classrooms. And you can kind of see it here in this picture, but in the middle of this building is a very large collaborative space. It's got stairs where students can come in for presentations, collaborative work, but also spend time at lunch and breaks where they can eat and be together. We are expecting this project to end in the summer. We are very hopeful that we'll be able to inhabit the building for the first day of school, but we are real close on this one and expect it to be online in the fall for classes here in the coming months. As soon as that project is done, we are going to break ground on the Aquatic Center. And this building, for those of you that are familiar with Davis Senior High School, that building with the funny roof is the old gymnasium there in the main quad of campus. And the building just here on the picture to the right is the new gym. So it is nestled right in the heart of the Davis Senior High School campus. And it requires the removal of a good number of portable classrooms that currently exist there on the left-hand side of this picture. In order for those classrooms to be removed, we have to be sure the STEM building is inhabitable. So these projects are sort of going to happen in sequence, and we expect this pool to begin construction in the summer or very early fall of 2024. I know our tennis community is getting anxious for the return of the remaining tennis courts. We did construct 3 new courts that are online. And we have 4 courts that are available. There's ones there in the middle during construction. But we also have 4 courts that have been unavailable. That's where our construction laydown area is for the STEM building. We expect those to come back online here in the coming months, probably for the fall. We've also got solar projects going all over the district. All of the ones on the left-hand side are installed. Unfortunately, the contractor who was finalizing the interconnection for all of these projects went out of business suddenly. So they are sort of all on hold for the moment while our power purchase agreement entity finds a new contractor to get these units plugged in. We expect to produce about 85% of our total energy usage through these solar arrays across all of our campuses, and we've been making steady progress moving all of our infrastructure to be electric. So all of our HVACs and other infrastructure, water heaters, all of those things, moving those to electric here as they are replaced. We have, as part of our bond project, a significant technology infrastructure. This is the stuff that nobody really thinks about or sees, but is really critical to high-functioning technology services. We're replacing switches, core infrastructure, cabling ports, Wi-Fi access points. And this project did a bunch of work last summer with the Wi-Fi access points. This summer is focused on the core switch infrastructure and some cabling upgrades. Next summer, we'll finish that work out. We also have projects that are happening just sort of on the usual. We call them deferred maintenance projects. One that I will note, a couple that I will note that are gaining a little bit of attention. We are replacing several sites' play structures, elementary play structures, and working with our special education community to have those be as inclusive as possible. And so the design of those will look quite different from the play structures you see around town and at our schools currently, to make sure folks in wheelchairs, those with limited mobility, can really access them to the greatest degree possible. We are doing what we're calling a mini master plan for the Davis High School athletics facilities. They're on the north side of campus. We know we need to do some planned work and have some improvements in the works, but are really looking to utilize those fields to the best of our ability and to a greater degree than they're currently being used. For those of you that have been to Pioneer Elementary, know that the concrete infrastructure around the core of that campus is in pretty rough shape. There's a lot of change in topography, and so we are looking to make some significant improvements there. Construction will probably be over a couple of years, given the volume there. We have a project going that we're calling strategic fencing. And our goal here is to limit access onto and out of campus for lots of reasons. We've got, in some campuses, cross traffic. We've got folks who we need to check in the office that make their way directly onto campus, students eloping, all sorts of reasons. So we have done initial outreach that happened in December at Davis High, North Davis, and Willett. We will be bringing preliminary plans back to those school communities right after spring break. And for most of those campuses, it's fencing on the sides. So at North Davis, it's the east and west sides, Davis High, really the east and west sides, and Willett on the north side, in connection where the park is. We're not looking at total enclosure of campuses at this point. I'm really looking to limit access and not have it closed off entirely. And our last big project that I think will be our last major construction project of this, what we're calling the bond project, is TKK extended day classrooms. So we have half-day kindergarten currently, and are looking to move that to an extended day model, so similar to the primary grades. In order to do that, we need more classrooms at several of our sites. When we started this project in the spring of last year, and the board allocated budget, we expected this project to be around $32 million for classrooms at each of these campuses. As we finished design and got new cost estimates just here in the last couple months, that number is looking more like $50 million. We definitely do not have that extra $20 million. So the board has been engaged in a process over the last few weeks to look at these considerations, financial and otherwise, and other considerations in order to come up with some interest from our board, which is focused on starting extended day kinder programming as soon as possible. They're willing to have that in existing classrooms that might not be ideal in the meantime, and focusing our construction at schools where we know enrollment projections are growing and we're steady, and not financing new construction, because that comes at the cost of the ongoing maintenance dollars that we really do need to take better care of our existing facilities. So these are the options we're presenting to the board actually tomorrow. Staff is recommending option 1, and that is new construction at Korematsu, Montgomery, North Davis, Pioneer, and Willett. We've already done outreach and have design and placement options really nailed down at Pioneer, Korematsu, and Montgomery. We will, if the board directs us, start outreach immediately following spring break at North Davis and Willett. We would be doing construction this summer, all of next year, finalizing in the summer of 2025, and opening extended day kinder for the fall of 25 at all 8 elementaries. In the meantime, figuring out what we need to do for some construction at Birch Lane Elementary. Both Putwin and Chavez would do extended day kindergarten in their existing facilities. So why don't I stop there on the facility side and take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. As always, there's a lot going on. You're doing a great job balancing all this. I'll just note that Trustee Jackson is here. Welcome, Trustee Jackson. And I will turn to my colleagues up here on the dais for any questions for Superintendent Best.
I don't have any.
Okay. Good. All right. No questions there. With that, we will move to 5B, DJUSD budget update.
Yeah, so here's the part 1 of the paradox. We are in a period where we will likely see budget reductions here over the next couple of years as a result of declining enrollment, lower attendance rates, and declining state revenue from the state budget. And as we think about this challenge, I've been using this graphic as a way to sort of ground us in how we think about the challenge. So when you make reductions or when times are good, you have to invest or divest from these three priorities in an organized way. And those priorities include our educational programs, right, all the things we do for students, remaining fiscally solvent, and then also providing adequate compensation for our employees. If these things get out of whack, we have long-term challenges. For many years, our district, when times got hard, focused on maintaining and retaining educational programming at the expense of employee compensation. And as a result, we sort of fell proportionally behind. So as we head into this time of uncertainty, economic uncertainty, we're really working hard to keep this triangle balanced. And that means sometimes you have to make reductions and give pay raises at the same time, right? You can't do one and not the other, or you'll have greater problems further down the road. So what does that mean for us? We have made a total over the course of this last 6 or 8 weeks, $6.5 million in funding and expenditure shifts and personnel reductions. So the first things we always want to do when we're faced with hard times is keep the cuts as far away from the people as possible. So we cut about $750,000 in non-personnel expenditures of all sorts. These are things like no travel, no conference, no food at meetings, reducing supply budgets, all those sorts of things. And then we looked at where we can take funds from that are currently in an unrestricted source and move them to restricted. Good example, as we move away from this financing facilities projects out of CFD funds, we moved some of our grounds and maintenance crew into our CFD funds so we can take better care of them. They're not as prone to downturns in the state economy, and it protect, we keep that service going, and it's protected from general fund reductions, moving other sources from, if we got a restricted grant from the state, make sure we're maximizing those grant funds first before we use state funds. The other, probably most significant challenge that we're facing currently is the ending of one-time funds. We, like other state agencies, got a lot of one-time money from the post-pandemic, state and federal sources. We made the deliberate decision to fund some staff with those funds, and as those funds run out, we need to reduce that staff. And I think the challenge for us is that the need still exists for much of that recovery dollars, but the dollars are coming to an end. And then finally, we need to make personnel reductions. And we've targeted about $3.0 million, 2.9, somewhere around there. And we're expecting to get some of that through attrition, mostly teachers and paraeducators. And then there's an actual reduction in force of about 17 FTE. Of that 17 FTE, about 25% of it is administrators, and then the rest is split between classified and certificated staff. And I think one of the reasons you're seeing us having to act in this manner and this year and not the districts around us is a function of how we're funded. So we are one of the lowest funded districts in the state. We're down the high 20s, low 30s of more than 1,000 school districts in the state. We get about 80 cents on the dollar compared to other school districts. So even with our parcel taxes, we still are about 10 cents difference from the average. So when there's a downturn in the state economy, we have to act quickly and decisively because we just don't have the savings account or the additional funds that other districts get to weather economic downturns. And so I think you're going to see districts like ours, making reductions this year. You're already starting to see some other districts. You're going to see a lot more next year because everybody's one-time funds will be expended, and everyone across the state is going to be facing the realities of an economic downturn. So I think I'll stop there and see if there's any questions. Oh, let me just talk about what's next. So many of you are connected, have friends and family who are educators and employees of the district throughout town. And so the unfortunate reality is this period between March and May is uncertain. Folks have received preliminary layoff notices, and they're just not sure. We know that there are this 1.6 million, what I call a reduction in force, is likely going to remain. Most of those reductions. There are other positions that we call soft money funded by site councils, Title I, PTA, grants, all those sorts of things. And those decisions are getting made here over the coming weeks. So we've got folks coming back from leave or not. Master scheduling, right, or planning for next year at the elementary and secondary level. Resignations, retirements, budgets get decided, principals decide what they're going to fund for the next year, and all of those things impact layoff rescissions in the coming months. So I think I'll stop there. Take any questions you have.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the dais and to my colleagues. Councilman Neville.
Thank you, Matt. I know it's not a great time. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. So in terms of the pink slips that you had to give out by March 15, was it primarily paraeducators or was it other classes of employees as well?
So there were sort of two big buckets, I would say. One is the soft money funded positions. So those are funded by PTAs, site councils, those sorts of things. Those are primarily paraeducators. So like, for example, we have what are called we call reading paraeducators that are funded by site councils regularly. Those decisions are made annually. Those folks are generally laid off annually. So that soft money funded one, I would say, is primarily paraeducators of some level. There's some other jobs in there as well, but I would say primarily paraeducators. The other reductions, that reduction in force is a little bit of everything. There's some fiscal techs in there, technology, district administrators, TOSAs, there's a little bit of everything there.
And classified employees primarily?
Both.
Or
in
both,
there.
okay.
Yeah, it's true. The reduction in force is more proportional because that is our ongoing reduction. It's designed to be, just essentially say we spend these amounts in these buckets for these employee groups and we're going to make proportional reductions. The highest proportion is administration. But the other group, the soft money funded, is almost entirely classified.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you a little bit when you talked about where we rank in terms of the other school districts. So what is our current per pupil amount for this school year, roughly?
10,250, somewhere around there.
And a question, I think you may have answered this for me before, but when students come in from another district on an inter-district transfer, they only bring with them the per pupil amount of the district they're going to. They don't bring the full amount they might have gotten at their home district?
No, they bring that amount.
Oh, they do bring the full
Yeah,
amount
so
of the home
the
district?
minimum they'll bring is on average 10,250, whatever that number is.
Okay,
And then if they are an EL learner, if they're
Yeah.
foster homeless, they will bring additional dollars
okay.
from the state and federal government.
Okay,
potentially.
so that's good, because I'm sure you hear this too. You hear people who have their own opinions about inter-district transfers and the fact that people who come in on
Yeah.
transfers are not residents, therefore not paying parcel taxes. But I think it's helpful for people to understand that many of those students who are coming in from Woodland, Dixon, others, they're coming in at a higher per pupil amount than we are pulling down for our
Yeah, and
students.
they're bringing 15 times the parcel tax rate. So if a family's going to pay $700 per parcel, the incoming student from another town is going to bring $10,000+ with them, so that we wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the things that I realize we don't have to get into a whole LCFF discussion here, but when I look at the demographics of some of our schools in our district, it's hard to understand why we aren't somehow getting a higher per pupil amount. You look at,
Yeah.
Pioneer, you look at other schools in the district and our demographics, however the formula works, that's where we rank.
Yeah, and I think there's the challenging component of the way, when the formula was designed, the base was targeted at a 2009-10 recovery rate. So we made reductions during the Great Recession, and the idea was that the base funding would get us back to 2000, it was either 8, 9, or 9, 10, I can't remember, adjusted for inflation. That doesn't pay any attention to what it actually costs to educate a child in the state of California. Even at that time, it was just restore funding. So the challenge of that reality is that as LCFF has grown, those supplemental and concentration funds are growing at a disproportionately high rate, and the base is still, it's increasingly inadequate, right? Because the base rate is sort of, the value of those dollars is going down marginally, but the concentration supplemental dollars continue to rise at a broader rate. So that 80 cents on the dollar reality is that next year we're going to be at 79. Probably the next year we'll be in 78 cents per dollar. So it's just going to continue to get, that gap's going to keep getting larger so long as the funding formula is in its current form. If the base funding gets adjusted periodically, that's a way that could help us.
And are there efforts to do that, or is that just so politically controversial?
I think the other challenge, speaking frankly, is when you look at the districts like us, you've got districts like Palo Alto, Manhattan Beach, Long Beach, you know, where they are just, their per capita income is much higher, or their basic aid, right? You look at a district like Palo Alto, $26,000 per student ADA, right? So it's just a whole other universe that some districts live in.
Yes, well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Don. I'll turn to Trustee Jackson or Greenwell.
No, I don't have any
Good.
questions, thank you.
Sure, I'll just jump in. And what I understand, and Matt, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, but I understand that aid comes from the state on a percentage basis, so that if you have a certain percent of what they call unduplicated students, then you get the certain critical benchmark amounts. And
Yeah, that's right.
so I've heard it mentioned like that Esparto has like as many unduplicated students as we do, but they get a higher amount because as a percentage it's great.
Yeah. Winners, for example, has 1,500 students. They get about $3 million in supplemental funds. We have 8,300 students. We get $3 million in supplemental funds because the proportional number of those students is equal. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just my only just kind of quick question is just around the reduction in staffing, and when you talk a lot about, when you talk about soft money and you look at where the vast majority of those, sounds like the vast majority of those dollars are spent are in services that are being provided to students of the low socioeconomic class, students, maybe ESL learners, paraeducators are focused with those types of populations in your schools. How are you backfilling? And you said the need is still there, but it seems like a lot of these cuts, right, are going towards the employees who are helping the students who need it the most. So how are you balancing that?
That's a great question. So I think I'll start by saying that anytime you make a reduction, students and staff are impacted negatively.
Sure.
There's just no two ways about that, whether it's the non-personnel reductions and their site budgets are reduced, or whether you're talking about individual staff. I think one of the biggest challenges for us is that our base programming is so slim, the only extras we have are serving students that need it. So either you're going to significantly raise class size, or you're going to just cut program in general. The only real, what I would call supplemental program, extra program we have is parcel tax funded. And so when we get to, the things that site councils and PTAs want to fund, that's it, right? And if they've got to make funding decisions between them, that's a real challenge. And I think, unless we see a significant change in our funding model, site councils and PTAs are going to continue to feel that pressure to fund the reading support para, whatever those might be. So I think that's a big challenge for us because the base funding model doesn't include the stuff that it should include.
And do you have, just my last question, do you have basically a number of support services, paraeducators, folks like that you don't want to go below? That like you step back in the district and say, no matter what, we're going to find elsewhere to cut because we want to have at least 2 at every school, or 4 at every school. That's kind of something that you want to have, and you know,
So,
is
so I'll
that-
give you an example. So I think you're talking about what's the core district model,
Sure, yeah.
staffing model versus what's extra. So every elementary school has a reading specialist. Every elementary school has an EL specialist, a librarian, a part-time librarian, a nurse, a counselor. And then if there's additional support services, they are serving particular students. So, for example, you might have students with disabilities, you're gonna have a paraeducator or other staff support. EL students might have additional paraeducators or staff support. So there's gonna be but those are gonna be in the base model, but then a little bit extra, where we wanna get, you know, where a school says, we wanna supercharge our reading scores in any given year. They're gonna fund some additional staff to do that, and unfortunately, that's the extra in our district.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think it's, you know, it's one of these conversations that when you look around, it's such an important conversation to have, and the impact that it has on so many people in our community. And this isn't a criticism, but you look and there's not a single person in this room, right? And it's like, besides us, and it is such an impactful piece of how students learn and how they can continue to grow and move out of a situation that they may be in. And oftentimes those are this, you know, by default, the programs and support services that are moving away. In times, like, not criticism of what I understand what you're saying, but it's just, it's such a tough situation to be in. And it's a tough spot to be in, because they need it the most, right?
Yeah.
We all know that, and we see it, and we understand it, and we know what the research shows, but it is the situation we're in.
Yeah, and I think the trustees sitting next to you have been grappling with it, if not that, then what?
Sure.
Question for the last several months, and you know, through that careful deliberation, they decided that those things on that list are you know, the things that we you know, can tolerate the least.
Sure.
You know, remove, or can tolerate the most cutting. And I think kudos to these two and the rest of our board. It's an incredibly difficult decision to cut staff and you know, support services that you know make a difference,
Mhm.
but you got to do it in order to keep that balance.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move to 5B.
If I just
Oh,
make,
sorry.
yeah, just make a quick, I mean, I guess it probably got mentioned earlier, I came late, but, you know, parcel tax passing is a positive on the site.
yeah, be much worse.
All right, we move to 5B. Do you
Yeah,
have any
I'll try
budget
to make these next ones pretty quick. So each year we do a demographics report. I forward these to Mike. I think he'll send them to you as well, so you can see the actual report, which is always interesting reading. Long and the short here is birth rates are declining, and as a result, our kinder cohorts are declining in size. That's the big takeaway here. The other interesting thing is around mobility. You know, 15 years ago, this chart was full of green, which means there were more kids joining grade to grade than there were kids leaving grade to grade. The red numbers on there are all grades in those attendance boundaries where there are fewer kids in the next year than there were the year before, right? It's called negative mobility. And just as a side note, you only see 6 elementary boundaries in here because Chavez and Montgomery are choice schools. They don't have a boundary of their own. As a result, the Pioneer and North Davis boundaries are a little bit bigger than the other schools. So this is the district forecast in terms of enrollment. The assumption here is that we will see some additional kids adding in TK as TK builds out over the next year, as folks get more familiar and used to that being a program for their 4-year-olds. We are also assuming an increase year over year of 30 non-resident students, right? So that trend Donna noted earlier, we're expecting that to continue. We had been assuming a 50 student increase year over year. So we're seeing that trend soften over time, and particularly post-pandemic. And this is that slide, those resident enrollment decline versus non-resident enrollment increase. This is an interesting chart. It essentially is kind of a heat map over time since 2005. And you can see where cohorts are declining in red and growing in green. That green cohort was essentially the build out of Mace Ranch. And so those students in 2005 through 2013 were sort of moving through the system. We've had very little new development in town in that window between 2014 and the present. And as students age out, we're seeing the effects of that. We're seeing them most prolifically in the Putnam boundary, where we're seeing our smallest kinder cohorts and very few students joining that west side boundary. This is a little bit about where students attend. This is always a fascinating matrix to me. So you see those 6 elementary boundaries, how many students live in those boundaries, and then what schools they attend. And I think one of the reasons there's so much movement around town is that we have solved low school enrollment challenges in the past with special program. That's how Chavez started, that's how Birchley Montessori started, that's how Montgomery Dual Immersion started, that's how Da Vinci Junior High started, Da Vinci High School, right? You solve enrollment challenges, whether it's too much enrollment or too little enrollment, by moving choice programming around. I think we're likely entering another one of those eras here in the not so distant future, particularly focused on the Putnam boundary. You'll note that number of resident students is 377 currently. That number is expected to drop 140 plus students in the next 5 years, bringing that boundary, the number of resident students in that boundary, to 230. So that's a significant decline. Willett is the only boundary expected to rise by a proportional number, about 140 students. We think that's mostly due to the completion of the, I can't remember what the name is, Orchard, are they still calling it Orchard Park? The family housing at UC Davis. It's kind of been completed there, and we're seeing families starting to join the school, and we expect that trend to continue as that's built out. So I'll take any questions on attendance or demographics.
Thank you, Matt. Any of my colleagues have questions for Superintendent Best?
If I could just add comments. So I, on my own time, I campaigned for Measure N, and I was walking the precinct where I live in West Davis, in the Putnam area. And I was looking, as I going house to house, I had my voter sheet, and I was amazed that it was feeling like 70 and 80% of the rolls there were households that were senior citizens. And then when Superintendent Best explains the low enrollment in that area, and I was walking some of those precincts, I could see just on the ground what that looks like.
More housing and babies, that's what we do.
Get some t-shirts.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. We'll move to 5D, DJ USD After School Programming Update.
All right, yeah, a lot of questions here in the last month or so. We have been working over the past couple of years to do a friendly takeover of Davis Kids Club, which is one of our 2 after-school program providers, that and Catalyst Kids are the 2 providers in our district for after-school care. And Davis Kids Club, very thankful for their partnership over many years. Linda Yanker is finally looking to retire. And so we've been planning the takeover of those programs for several years now. And that will happen this fall, should the board give us that direction tomorrow night. These programs are supported by our strategic plan and definitely connected with our expanded learning program, which is a state program that's relatively new to the state after the pandemic, and is really designed to help provide support for families with after school and summer care. So we're imagining this in 2 ways. One, we have state-funded seats for foster or homeless youth, free and reduced lunch, students with free and reduced lunch, and then also a fee-based program, which currently exists with Davis Kids Club and Catalyst. We will have kinder programming, so until we get to that extended kinder programming, there will be off-site care. So we have morning session, afternoon session. Parents will be able to have their kids come in the morning and do afternoon kinder, or vice versa. That's sort of one option. And then we will have after-school care, TK6. This is starting right after school at 2:35 for primary age students and going to 5:30. The costs are just a little bit more than Kids Club currently pays, but quite a bit less than Catalyst Kids for any of these programs. And then we will host a summer, what we're calling a Summer Spark program. The state requires, if we're going to do that extended learning program, we have to provide 30 days of summer enrichment programming. This will be connected to our existing summer programming and coordinated with city summer programming to make sure students have access and can get where they need to go in town. So the board, like I mentioned, will give us direction about moving forward with this project tomorrow night. We expect to open enrollment right after spring break and close that at the end of April. Get folks placed in May and start the summer and the fall. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Matt. I'll bring it back to my colleagues. Any questions, comments on our school program update? Yeah, Trustee Jackson.
Sure. Do you imagine, so there are state-funded slots for this. Can you maybe describe a little bit how that allocation works? Will there be sort of early shots from those who could be eligible?
Yeah, so currently we fund seats at Davis Kids Club through this ELOP programming, and essentially we know who those students are when they register, and they're already enrolled with us. So all of those students who would like to continue have first enrollment, and then we will fund all of those seats. We don't have any wait lists currently for those students. And we think we've kind of got that max capacity. We'll see how that goes here over the coming weeks. And then the fee-based seats get filled afterwards. And then, of course, if we have more demand, as long as we can staff it, we can certainly scale up.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other questions or comments from my colleagues, we will move to public comment on agenda item number 5. Not seeing any public comment, I'll close agenda item 5 and move to agenda item number 6. Agenda item number 6, announcements and comments. I'll turn to our staff, Mike and Matt, and then I'll bring it back to the dais.
Well, I was just going to say, I think when we talk about future meetings, maybe adjusting our time so Trustee Jackson can get here. It's work obligations. That's it.
Yeah,
I had nothing further.
Okay, thank you. And to my colleagues? Trustee Jackson?
Measure in and pass.
Congratulations, that's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Any other announcements or comments? I'll just make it tied to agenda item number 7, future meetings on the 15th is our second community outreach for what's now being called the Walnut Park Library. Our first one was held at Montgomery Elementary. This one will be held on the 15th at 6 o'clock at Mary J. Stevens Branch Library. It's going to be kind of more of an open house format as opposed to the one that we did at Montgomery a few months ago, where we had presentations from the county, the city, architects and such. So this will be held on the 15th of May at 6 o'clock at Mary Stevens. Please, if you have time after the meeting, try and make it over there. Maybe we'll figure a way, maybe not bump the time to 6 o'clock on the 15th. Sorry about that, Trustee Jackson, just so we can get over to that, or we can figure something else out for that one, but if you're able to make it over, that'd be great. Sure.
Well, I'm thinking of it, on our next meeting is the 15th, and just to let you know that I cannot be here for that meeting, just so you know. On May 15th, that's the next scheduled meeting for this 2x.
All right, well, we have a couple of things that night. Maybe we'll look at some scheduling and time changes and coordinate both. We'll let our staff, able hands.
I'll take a look at that schedule and see if maybe an alternative date.
Okay. Thank you. Any public comment on agenda item number 6? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment. Agenda item number 7, we just touched on May 15th. So we have a few different conflicts, so we'll have City Manager Webb and Superintendent Best and their staff work together and reach out to my colleagues and I around the potential rescheduling or shifting of that meeting. And I will close agenda item number 7, and we are at item 8 and adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
For some reason it was
This is
more.
Gemma from